Night settles over America's biggest cities with a different kind of silence, now less sharp, less frantic, less punctured by sirens. For the first time in years, homicide numbers are falling. Almost 20% down across major urban centers. Headlines from places like Chicago, New York, Baltimore, and Los Angeles tell a story many people never expected to hear again. The killing is slowing. But behind every statistic, every chart, every police briefing, there is a human story full of doubts, hope, and the heavy truth that numbers never erase the wounds left behind. The story begins in Chicago, in a South Side neighborhood where the summer heat used to predict how bad the violence would be. Last year, there were nights when gunfire felt as common as the passing L train. But this year, Pastor Reggie walks the block at dusk and hears something unusual: children laughing outside, parents sitting on stoops, a teenager riding a bike with headphones, confident enough to drift into the street he once avoided. The news says Chicago's homicides dropped steeply, one of the biggest declines in the country. But Pastor Reggie doesn't measure safety with numbers. He measures it with moments like these. 3 blocks away, a mother named Tara stands in front of a mural of her son, Jamal, who was killed 2 years ago. She traces the outline of his painted smile with her fingertips. She has heard the reports, the optimism, the promise that things are improving. And while she's glad fewer families are burying their children, the fall in homicides doesn't bring her boat back. The neighborhood may be quieter, but her grief still echoes. And this is the truth cities across America are wrestling with right now: progress and pain living side by side. In New York City, officers in precincts once overwhelmed by shootings now report long stretches with no violent incidents at all. Crime analysts talk about improved policing strategies, faster emergency responses, and better community outreach. Some credit youth programs, others credit better economic conditions. Some say the pandemic's worst waves of violence are finally settling. But if you walk into Brownsville, East Harlem, or Mud Haven after midnight, you still see mothers peeking through blinds at every loud sound. You still see the corners where teenagers gather because home isn't always safe. You still see areas where hope hasn't taken root yet. One number can drop, but fear rarely falls as fast. Across the country, in Los Angeles, Detective Julio Morales sits at his desk long after the city's orange sunset fades. For 23 years, homicide cases have hardened him, shaped him, aged him. But this year, something changed. He closed fewer murder files. For the first time in his career, less death didn't feel like a fantasy. Still, every detective knows the same thing: when violence drops, it doesn't drop equally. Julio remembers standing with a grandmother outside her apartment complex after her grandson was shot. The city's overall homicide rate had fallen that year too, but not on that block. Not for that family. As he held her shaking hand, he realized that statistics were comfort for mayors and newspapers, not for people living in overlooked pockets of pain. In Baltimore, the shift feels even more dramatic. Community activists who spent years shouting for attention now hear something they once prayed for: momentum. Streets that used to empty before sunset now see food trucks, basketball games, open-air concerts. A young organizer named Maya describes it like this: violence didn't disappear, but possibility finally showed up. Her group works in neighborhoods that still carry trauma deeply etched in cracked sidewalks and boarded windows. They don't pretend the crisis is over. They don't ignore the corners where guns still determine the rhythm of life. But they see something real: a generation of kids who are growing up during a year where fewer funerals fill their weekends. And even though the overall homicide numbers have dropped, Maya knows the fight isn't over. The danger shifts, evolves, moves from one block to another. One night she hears fireworks. Another night she hears gunfire. And every time, her heart pauses. Improvement doesn't erase instinct. In Philadelphia, a mother named Denisha prays every morning before her son walks to school. She knows the city has seen a dramatic drop in killings. She repeats it like a mantra because she needs the hope. Her son, Malik, used to cross the street at the first sign of a crowd. Now he walks with a group of friends and jokes like kids are supposed to. But then one afternoon, as she waits for him at the bus stop, a fight breaks out between two teens. No guns, no knives, just fists and shouting. But the sight freezes her. Because when a parent has lived through years of constant reports of shootings, even a small scuffle feels like a warning. This is the contradiction the whole country is living through, a massive drop in homicides and a lingering shadow of violence. Experts, officials, and neighborhood leaders are trying to answer the same question: why now? What changed? Some point to better policing technology. Others credit community leaders stepping into roles no one else filled: mentors, mediators, protectors. Some say the end of the pandemic chaos slowly stabilized society. Others say it was simply time. The surge of violence that swept America after 2020 may finally be fading. But even as the bright spots multiply, the darker corners remain. Neighborhoods that never make the evening news still struggle. Families still avoid certain streets. Children still duck when they hear loud pops. Communities still hold vigils, still repaint murals, still pray for one more year with fewer funerals. The most powerful part of this moment is how honest it is. People aren't pretending the problem is solved, but they are realizing that progress is real and worth fighting for. At a community center in Detroit, a group of teenagers gathers around a long wooden table. A counselor asks them a simple question: do you feel safer this year? Some nod. Some shrug. One boy says, yeah, but only sometimes. And somehow, that answer is the most truthful reflection of America right now. Things are better. But things are not fixed. Homicides falling by nearly 20% is not just a number, it's a sign that hope is creeping back into places that have lived in fear for too long. It means fewer families grieving, fewer lives cut short, fewer emergency calls at 3 a.m. It means a nation beginning to heal, even if the scars remain. As night returns to Chicago, New York, Baltimore, LA, Philadelphia, and dozens of other cities, the silence feels different, not perfect, not complete, not pure, but hopeful. A kind of silence that says, keep going, the work matters, the lives matter, the progress matters. And in cities long marked by violence, even that small flicker of hope is enough to light an entire block.